Hello and welcome and namaste from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy and coming up over the next 30 minutes. India parliamentarians facilitate Prime Minister Narendra Modi for reduction in US tariffs to 18% announced by President Trump after a phone call. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal attacks the opposition over questioning India-US trade deal. Says Delhi has got the best deal with Washington among its trade competitors. Russia hits Ukraine energy sites with a heavy missile barrage on the eve of second round of US brokered tripartite talks in Abu Dhabi. And gold recovers by 4.9% and is set for its biggest daily rise since November 2008. Silver also surges by 8.6% during midday trade. India and the US have agreed for a reduction of tariff in bilateral trade, under which Washington will bring down reciprocal tariff on Indian goods to 18%. US President Donald Trump has said on Monday, after a phone call with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and later in a social media post on X, Prime Minister Modi said, and I quote, "Wonderful to speak with my dear friend President Trump. Delighted that Made in India products will now have a reduced tariff of 18%. Big thanks to President Trump on behalf of the 1.4 billion people of India for this wonderful announcement. When two large economies and the world's largest democracies work together, it benefits our people and unlocks immense opportunities for mutually beneficial cooperation. President Trump's leadership is vital for global peace, stability and prosperity. India fully supports his efforts for peace. I look forward to working closely with him to take our partnership to unprecedented heights." End quote. And President Trump, on his part, termed his conversation with Prime Minister Modi as an honor and termed him as one of his greatest friends and a powerful and respected leader of India. He said that the amazing relationship between the US and India will be even stronger going forward. He added that he and Prime Minister Modi are two people that get things done, something that cannot be said for most. Meanwhile, the two leaders, according to Trump, also talked about ending the conflict with Russia and Ukraine. And Prime Minister Modi was greeted with applause and accolades at the NDA Parliamentary Party meeting following an announcement of the landmark tariff reduction by the US. Speaking at the BJP Parliamentary Party meeting, Union Minister Kiren Rijiju highlighted that under PM Modi's leadership, India has successfully signed major trade deals with the European Union, the United Arab Emirates, Mauritius, Australia, the UK, New Zealand and now the US.
पार्लियामेंट्री पार्टी में आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को अभिनंदन किया और उनका मार्गदर्शन में जो ऐतिहासिक ट्रेड डील्स हासिल किए हैं उसके लिए बधाई भी दी है। टोटल 39 देश 39 देशों के साथ फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट हो गए हैं। ये ऐतिहासिक है और ये 39 कंट्रीज जो है पूरा डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज है, जैसे यूरोपियन यूनियन के जितने कंट्रीज हो या ऑस्ट्रेलिया हो, न्यूजीलैंड हो, यूके हो, तो ये ऐतिहासिक है।
And India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal briefed the media on the key details on the reduction of tariffs by the United States, calling the India-US trade agreement a good omen for India's bright future. The minister on Tuesday said the deal would open up vast opportunities for the poor, fishermen, farmers as well as youth.
भारत के भविष्य को चार चांद लगाने वाला ट्रेड डील माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में कल रात फाइनलाइज किया गया है। मैं 140 करोड़ देशवासियों की तरफ से माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी का धन्यवाद करता हूं और आप सभी को बधाई देता हूं क्योंकि ये वास्तव में भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था को, भारत के 140 करोड़ नागरिकों को, हर गरीब, किसान, मछुआरा, गांव में रहने वाला युवा, युवती, हमारी बहनें, महिलाएं, सभी के लिए ढेर सारे अवसर लाने वाला ट्रेड डील माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कल तय किया।
Leaders, market experts as well as economists have welcomed the reduction in US tariffs, terming it a historic and win-win agreement which will boost bilateral economic ties between the two nations, improve market sentiment and strengthen India's position in global trade. Terming it as monumental, saying the deal will accelerate bilateral trade and strategic partnership.
Tariffs on India export drops by 18%, easing pressure on key sectors while India commits to a deeper trade and energy alignment with US. The outcome strengthens India's export competitiveness, rebalance global supply chains and unlocks new opportunities for both countries. This signals a tighter economic cooperation between US and India, which is not just a trade deal, but a long-term growth alignment that reshapes the global market.
The two sides, something to be very happy about. It'll provide, I think, for a good news story, so to speak, at a moment when these high-level engagements between the U.S. and India in recent months have so often been, feature these caveats about how the relationship is in tough shape and that the two sides need to try to work to make things better. Now you have a success story. It's an indication that this relationship is getting closer to being back where both sides, at the end of the day, want it to be.
Was, wow, it's finally here. It's taken too long, and I'm just glad that we've got an announcement of a deal. I think the two sides have been close for months. The trade negotiators on both sides have been working at this. It appeared last July that they were very close. Things went off the rails at that time. It was largely on the Russian oil purchases issue, but there were other problems as well. So, it's been clear for some time that to get this across the finish line, it would require the two leaders to speak. And that's what happened this morning. So I think their perspectives match up well. The two leaders are on the same page, and there is truly a trade agreement here that's been announced.
Let me bring in DD Jessica Taneja for more on this. Jessica, just tell us, how did this really happen, the phone call, and what is our understanding of what exactly has happened now? Because we've had the Commerce and Industry Minister also clearing the air on some of the things which were not really clear with those announcements that were made overnight.
That's correct. But with this reduction of tariffs to now 18% is certainly a good signal for the Indian industry, and certainly something for the government to sort of claim that it has done work which was extremely crucial and quite difficult given the kind of geoeconomics that was out on display, especially from the Trump 2.0 administration. It's not like India wasn't prepared on how to deal with the incoming presidency of Donald Trump, but I think it was more to do with how tariffs were being used to sort of dictate policy back home, and also for a domestic audience that gets tax rebates from these tariffs, that gets tariff rebates from what are collected, and if those initial reports are to be believed. But with the phone conversation that took place between the two leaders, seems to now signal that the relationship between the two had continued to strengthen, to advance to stages that it has seen in the past. You'd recall, Gautam, it was February last year when Prime Minister Narendra Modi had visited DC, and he was welcomed by President Trump at the White House. That was quite a moment where the two had decided that a deal would be arrived at soon. And no one had anticipated the tariffs that then were announced during Trump back in April later that year. With all of that given in mind and the context to what India and the United States have witnessed in their global strategic comprehensive partnership is certainly moving in a direction it always was intended to. So in terms of that, I think this is what it sort of looks like, at least for the moment, that it's back on track and it's going to advance the way it was always meant to be.
And the Commerce Minister has also spoken about safeguarding the interest of India's farmers and other vulnerable sections, which will, in fact, he's talked about a benefit to almost all sections of society through this trade deal and an unlocking of opportunities in an unprecedented manner.
That's correct, Gautam. India exported about $87 billion worth of goods in 2024. If that number is to be, that is the latest. Those are the latest figures we have. We don't have the ones for the last financial year, and that seems to be indicating that yes, America is one of the most important markets for India, and India is an important market for the United States as well. You look at the announcements in the budgets. And you'll notice that cloud computing and AI data centers are getting a tax holiday for the next 21 years. And that is a big relief for American cloud computing and AI data center companies. And not only is that a welcoming move, but also bringing in, opening up the nuclear energy market to now private sector is another indication of how things were moving in that direction, where you'd see ease of relations and, of course, an upward trajectory in terms of also trade. Now, the biggest losses were to be faced, of course, by merchandise exporters. If this particular tariff announcement had not been made anytime sooner, now that also is a less of a worrying moment for the merchandise exporters, textiles, from leather to gems and jewelry, chemicals, and of course India's electronics and pharmaceuticals were exempt from those tariffs, but still there was going to be a larger impact on other sectors as well. So it comes as a relief, so to say, but at the same time you also look at how India has been able to keep its trade options open and make sure that it has other markets for offset, like the European Union, which is, of course, also a huge market when it comes to goods import. And India is aiming to increase its exports to the European Union with this new FTA, which is promising more than 90% of, export zero duty goods that would be now sent to both the countries. So, it is interesting the time that we're in, Gautam, because this year has seen not only comprehensive agreements and ones that have been in offing since 2 decades, but also an assertion from India's point of view that it is open to global markets and it's open to reform and change and invite in those FIIs and FDI inflows soon.
Right. Well, the market's reacting very positively in a very upbeat mood with a gap up in the morning, and that not as much as the jump that was there initially, but still tremendous increase over how things closed from the previous trading day. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Jessica Taneja. Now, 8 opposition members have been suspended from the Lok Sabha, which is the lower house of India's parliament, on Tuesday for the remainder of the budget session for violating rules and throwing papers on the chair. Parliamentary Affairs Minister Kiran Rijiju named all 8 members and moved a motion in the House. The MPs were suspended under Rule 374 for contempt of the House and hurting the dignity of the chair by coming near the tables of the Secretary General of the Lok Sabha and throwing papers. The motion was adopted by the House amid protests from opposition members.
Please be seated. A serious note of the misconduct of Sri Manikam Tagore, Sri Amrinder Singh Raja Waring, Sri Gurjit Singh Aulia, Sri Hebi Edin Prashant, Padole, Sri Dean Karyakos, S. Venkatesh, and Kiran Reddy in utter disregard to the House and the authority of the chair through reaching to the table of Secretary General and other officers in the well of the House and throwing papers on the chair and having been named by the chair resolved that the above mentioned members may be suspended from the services of the House for the remainder of the session under Rule 3742.
And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. Iran and the US to hold nuclear talks on Friday in Turkey. France adopts 2026 budget after 2 no-confidence votes fail. And Delhi Capitals face Gujarat Giants today in the eliminator of the WPL. The winner will face RCB in the finals.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, Russia launched the most powerful attack so far this year on Ukraine's battered energy facilities overnight, Kyiv said on Tuesday, leaving hundreds of thousands without heating as temperatures plunged to minus 20 degrees Celsius. The strikes damaged high-rise buildings, thermal plants, and even the base of Kyiv's iconic motherland statue. President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned Moscow for terrorizing people on the coldest days of winter, while NATO chief Mark Rutte made an unannounced visit to Kyiv. Ukraine's Air Force reported 71 missiles and 450 drones were used in the assault. 5 people were wounded in the capital, while Kharkiv saw heating cut to 100,000 subscribers. Authorities urged residents to seek shelter in invincibility points. The attack came just before a second round of peace talks in Abu Dhabi, following a failed first round last weekend. Russia continues to demand Kyiv's withdrawal from Donetsk, while Ukraine insists such concessions are unacceptable. And the Kremlin issued a stark warning on Tuesday, cautioning that the world is entering a dangerous period as the last remaining nuclear arms control agreement between the United States and Russia is set to expire this week. Spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said, and I quote, in just a few days, the world will be in a more dangerous position than it has ever been before, referring to the imminent collapse of the New START treaty. The Kremlin, which has offered to extend some of the terms, added that the world's top 2 nuclear powers will be left without a fundamental document which would limit the control these arsenals. Now, Iran and the United States will resume nuclear talks on Friday in Turkey after US President Trump warned Iran of consequences if a deal is not reached. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi will meet in Istanbul on Friday in an effort to revive diplomacy over a long-running dispute about Iran's nuclear program. Representatives from Saudi Arabia and Egypt are also likely to participate in the meeting. US President Donald Trump has maintained he is hopeful that Washington will work something out with Iran, but also warned on Monday that bad things will happen if no deal is reached.
Because right now, we have a tremendous force going there, just like we did in Venezuela, even bigger. And they'll be there soon, and I'd like to see a deal negotiated. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I mean, if I knew I wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't tell you. I'd be very foolish if I would tell you. But right now we're talking to them. We're talking to Iran, and if we could work something out, that'd be great. And if we can't, probably bad things would happen.
And Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi on Monday said his country was ready for diplomacy with the United States.
We are ready for diplomacy, but they should know that diplomacy with threats, intimidation, and pressure is not compatible. Diplomacy has its own ideology.
The meeting would be the first direct talks between the US and Iranian officials since April last year, before Israel and the US carried out strikes on Iranian nuclear and missile sites during a brief conflict in June. Sick and wounded Gazans began crossing into Egypt to seek medical treatment on Monday after Israel permitted a limited reopening of Gaza's Rafah border post. The Rafah crossing is the sole route in or out of nearly all of Gaza's more than 2 million residents. It was largely shut for almost 2 years, and reopening it to allow even limited access to the outside world is one of the last steps required under the initial phase of a US-brokered ceasefire reached in October. In other updates, US envoy Steve Witkoff, who had a hand in negotiating the ceasefire deal, will meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday. Witkoff and fellow envoy and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner met with Netanyahu in late January and reportedly pushed for Rafah's reopening. France adopted a 2026 government budget on Monday following months of fraught negotiations after Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu survived the latest in a string of no-confidence motions. The budget, adopted on Monday after 4 months of political deadlock over government spending, includes measures to bring France's deficit down and boost military spending. Lawmakers rejected 2 no-confidence motions from the hard left and the far-right parties, tabled after the Premier on Friday forces budget through Parliament without a vote for the third and final time. Motions tabled by France Unbowed, the Greens and other left-wing groups drew 260 of the 289 votes needed to oust the government. The far-right motion secured only 135 votes. Budget negotiations have consumed the French political class for nearly 2 years after President Emmanuel Macron's 2024 snap election delivered a hung parliament, just as a massive hole in public finances made belt-tightening more urgent. The US House of Representatives on Tuesday will vote on a spending bill to end the partial government shutdown. On Monday evening, the House Rules Committee voted to move the Senate package forward for a full House vote. The deal, if approved, would separate the Department of Homeland Security from the broader spending package. This will allow lawmakers to approve funding for agencies such as the Pentagon and the Department of Labor, while new restrictions are considered on federal immigration agents. The shutdown is in response to 2 US citizens being killed in Minneapolis. US President Donald Trump has urged the House of Representatives on Monday to swiftly adopt a spending bill and end the 3-day government shutdown. Speaking to reporters, Trump said that US lawmakers in Congress are nearing a resolution aimed at ending the partial government shutdown.
Johnson, I spoke with Leader Thune, and I think they're pretty close to a resolution. You know, we were at 5.6% GDP, and we lost 1.5 points because of the 42-day shutdown. Think of that. We would have been at 7. Nobody ever saw a number like 7.
Silver and gold staged a sharp rebound in futures trade on Tuesday, snapping a 3-session losing streak as investors stepped in with value buying after the recent sell-off. Multi-commodity exchange, silver for March delivery surged over 12%. Gold also recovered strongly, with the April contract jumping over 5% per 10 grams. The rebound was mirrored in global markets. On COMEX in New York, March silver futures climbed more than 12%, while April gold futures advanced over 6% per ounce, signaling a broad-based recovery in precious metals. Let's get you some sports now. And Delhi Capitals will take on Gujarat Giants in the eliminator of the Women's Premier League later this evening, with a place in their 4th consecutive final at stake. DC face a confident Gujarat side, which has already beaten them twice this season. Capitals, finalists in each of the previous 3 editions, are still in search of their elusive maiden title. Their skipper, Jemima Rodriguez, has grown into the leadership role in her first major captaincy assignment. On the other hand, Giants' skipper, Ashley Gardner, has been outstanding, currently the 5th highest run getter in the tournament. Further bolstering the Giants' firepower is veteran all-rounder Sophie Devine, the tournament's leading wicket-taker with 17 wickets. The winner of this high-stakes clash will meet league leaders RCB in the tournament's finale. The 145th International Olympic Committee session opening ceremony took place at Milan's historic Teatro alla Scala as part of the build-up to the Milano Cortina 2026 Olympic Winter Games. Italian President Sergio Mattarella held a bilateral meeting with IOC President Kirsty Coventry, who said that the Games would be unforgettable. The Milano Cortina 2026 Foundation President Giovanni Malago and Italian National Olympic Committee President Luciano Bonifiglio were also present at the event. It will be the first time in 20 years since the 2006 Torino Olympics that the Games returned to the European Alps. The Winter Olympics will kick off with an opening ceremony at the San Siro Stadium on the 6th of February. And that's all we have for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. Just scan the QR code on the screen to download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.